Across the Park podcast is proud to be sponsored by Globe Gas and Heating. For the best kitchen and bathroom renovations, boiler servicing and repair, and central and underfloor heating in the Northwest, head over to globecentralheating.com and quote Across the Park for a free quote.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Across the Park podcast. We're, as always, in the fantastic Pod Cafe studios. Thanks to the guys here for sorting out the amazing setup. And again, please check them out if you're part of a business or you're looking to try and record your own podcast or even record anything, outside the studio in your own office. These guys can help you out. As you've seen with our recent preview for the derby, again, very professionally produced, so please check them out. We're going to be looking back at the Brighton game, obviously, today, as well as looking forward to the Palace game away, and we'll also be having a bit of a chat about the League Cup. Dare I say it, the draw's opened up for us, so I don't want to get too excited, but we are going to touch on it in a moment. We've got some socials as well. Loads of our followers, subscribers have sent us questions, so I'll be putting them your way, Colin. Yeah. Thanks to Colin Flood again for joining us. How you doing, mate?
I'm all good, guys. Thanks
good stuff. And before we get into the episode, just going to thank again our long-term sponsors, Globe Heating and Gas. Despite my t-shirt, it's warm in the studio here. It's not so warm outside. I know that it's that time of the year where everyone's boiler starts to break down. So give the guys a shout if you're looking to try and upgrade before the really cold weather kicks in. Top lads over there, know Lee's really busy trying to get him over to do a few bits for me, but quote Across the Park and you get yourself a free quote. Just on that one, Col, I just want to mention your lads gear you've got on there as well, Arctic Peak.
Yeah. So he started his own cap brand and jumpers. He's moving into t-shirts, so obviously wearing the apparel as you can see.
It sticks out. You can see it really well on the camera there.
Yeah. So I'm going for a home and away Everton colour suit.
And that's they do basically personalised stuff as well, don't they? Different colours and stuff like that.
So we'll go personalised to some teams, boxes, other types of sports and colours, keeping it close to the club. He's got one for our local club, Height, in green and white, and does that in black. But yeah, the boxing club at Derry's, the same colours in that. But no, he's doing really well with it. He's enjoying it, and we're obviously, as you can see, modelling the apparel.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my free hoodie. So when my free hoodie comes in, I'll give it a bit more of a plug. But yeah, check them out, Arctic Peak. We'll put the socials in the description for this episode. So without further ado, Colin, I'm going to go into the weekend's game against Brighton. I mean, it's the 1-1 draw, or there's the results, I guess, there's the performance, and I mean, just before we get into, I guess, the nitty gritty of it, feelings on the result itself and generally the performance.
Look, I think contrast the two styles for me. And since I was last on, obviously Brentford game, I'll be honest, I was very happy with the performance. Really happy with it. Solid, structured. We look really difficult to break down, and if it's anything, it's more of a blueprint for the squad of players we've got now moving forward. That even home or away, I personally believe that that's the right way to set us up. I do look at the depth and stuff like that over the coming games, but I think that system seems to suit players that we've got in the group as well. And if it changes results out, then that's fine. But I think Saturday was just one of them games where we just got to pick points up, regardless whether that's a draw. Hopefully it's a win, but obviously, just keep getting them points on the board. Yeah,
I agree. What I'm going to do with the socials, I'm just going to bring them in as and when they come up naturally. So this is the case with two of these comments. Wayne has said 3 games in 6 days using the same players, bar 1 or 2. They're a good side, referring to Brighton. It's a good point. Aaron Mack half backs that up, but goes, I guess, a little bit more in depth. Surely for possession-based football, you need the right talent, which is pretty much what you're getting at. Do we have the right talent for possession-based football? In my opinion, we don't. So people need to be realistic about how we can set up and how we can play. Do you agree with those 2 points?
Well, as you say, the contrast, and I think that's, that for me is the feeling of, when you're sitting in the terraces, the fans, look, we could try and come out and play like Brighton. we all know what's going to happen.
We did, and we touched on it before we come on earlier, probably about 20 minutes ago, and I was talking to you about the frustrations under Frank Lampard and the fact we were trying to be something we weren't, and we were trying to produce a brand of football, style of football that the players and the squad were not capable of executing, and we were crying out for just, as you put it before, a blueprint, and to be hard to beat, and to see a committed set of players. I'm seeing all those things at the moment, and I'd urge those fans who are maybe not looking at those things to probably just focus on that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're harder to beat, and you can see that in the way that the two teams set up. I think in Zerbi's comments at the end of the game as well, he said, the progress that the team have made, in the time he's been around the Prem and played against us, has been pretty good. And again, it's getting results. So that's exactly what we wanted. I mean, the counter-attacking style or the counter-press, the way we're playing at the minute, I think if give it more games, I think the first comments around the depth in squad, I think that'll probably in the coming games will be telling. We're Onana, like for Saturday, but we've got an international break coming up in between fixtures, little time to recover, a little bit of time to recover for the squad. But listen, for me, they look a lot more dangerous the way they played Saturday, counter-attacking. Calvert-Lewin, I thought he was fantastic Saturday. His older players flicking onto Dukes and stuff. But I was really happy with it. Solid performance, hard to break down. Roll back maybe 4 or 5 games previously at home, we would have collapsed there.
Yeah, well, you touched on it before. The last time you were in was us previewing the Brentford game, and we were kind of saying, I wouldn't say last chance saloon, but it was like almost last roll of the dice for Deitch. Can he try and find a formula to get us some goals? Because we were, really struggling to get on the score sheet. We obviously went on and scored 3 there. We've scored 3 a few times since. Obviously in the home game, and then the game at Burnley, or the game at home to Burnley, sorry. I think for me, he's not trying to be, or we're not trying to be something, we're not trying to be over expansive. It's not a focus on keeping the ball. I'm not a fan of possession stats. I never have been. I don't look at it and go, we've had this much of the ball, therefore we deserve to make X and Y happen. I prefer to look at what we do with it when we've got it. If you are going to look at the basic stats, and the one that gets thrown about all the time is the XG, isn't it? We are creating chances. We are matching teams, if not better than most teams, in terms of the expected goals. And for me, if you're a fan, you want to see us create opportunities. You want to see us create more and better opportunities than our opponents. And despite what must have been about 80% possession that the Brighton had the weekend, they didn't really, Dunk's free kick aside, trouble Pickford to any great extent, did they?
No, covering, in the key areas, the wide areas, but even almost, the stepping out of Braithwaite, as a centre-back, he cut a lot of it out. I noticed Lallana's movements in the middle was there to create a little bit of chaos and dragging people around to get the wide players on.
Didn't really take the bait, did he?
No, and I thought they dealt with it really well, and they suckered Brighton in quite a few times where they got a few transitions in there and broke, and we looked dangerous in the press then. But for me, I thought really 2 styles, Everton style matched Brighton style in terms of not allowing them to break us up too much in our sort of final third, and I think the game plan for me, whether it's home or away, is to keep playing like that. The fans will get behind it. It's our kind of game plan with that squad of players, but very Moyes-esque for me. He's quite structured in, that's where I can see where he's wanting to get to now from like before the Brighton game, and try and play that, that Doucouré's Kale sort of role, where he goes and 100%. Supports the striker. And you can see he's reaping the benefits from it. And he's keeping the same squad of players around it. But again, I think in this day and age, the amount of games and the pace, the wear and tear on the squad, hopefully won't be too telling in the coming weeks. But I was really pleased with it, me. Yeah, not many games I'll stay right into the added time at the ends with the kids. Yeah, just for traffic reasons to get out. But I did, because it was important to let them know on Saturday that.
Yeah, 100%.
Appreciated the performance.
Yeah, and I think that was really telling. It was good to see, good to hear. The fans did appreciate it, and I do reiterate that. I think most Evertonians, if you as a group of players as a team, as a manager, you go out and you give it your all, and you probably conduct yourselves as well as you can do. But more than anything else, you work hard. You're tough to beat. Evertonians generally do appreciate that. I think they did on Saturday. A couple of more negative comments, which you would expect given the style. This one's from Amelia. I know it was a good point. I know that, but watching that style of football is so boring. The second half was tedious. Second one, I can't quite make out the name here, but it's Up the Toffees, 1990, something like that. There's possession-based football, then there's 20% possession at home against the team who will be at best around 8 this season. Let that sink in. Bit harsh, you think?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. Because when you look at some of the other teams, their possession statistics will flitter depending on how they play and how they play. And Villa are not a big possession-based team as far as I'm aware. But the way they set up, it's effective.
Newcastle have done it at times as well, where they've hardly had any of the ball.
Yeah, they sit in, hard to break down. And the one thing I noticed about the team on Saturday as well is you could see the players understood it more.
Yeah.
They seem to be getting a little bit more consistent now with, how they want to move across the pitch and kind of not allow those gaps to appear. And you can see it's got a bit more confidence in it. Look, we'll always have fans who want a Martinez style of footy, and loved it when it come. But then obviously you have the other set of fans who want a
that
little
become
bit
just
more.
as tedious, didn't it? Having loads of the ball and not doing anything with it.
But I mean, and there's your other example in it. You contrast there. Brighton get in the final third, but they spent most of their game in the final third, but never really hurt Everton. So they'll be moaning about creating chances, and putting chances away. And relatively, I was really happy when Ferguson come off for them because I thought, he's a big threat.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And Everton just limited them, to a bit part at times. Even when Gilmore went off, I was quite happy with that because for me, he looked like he dictated the play. And I actually thought they were just as worried about, losing the points as we were. Even though it was 1-0, they were still penning us in, pressing us in. But I was really happy considering where we've been from the start of the season, the first 6 to the next set of 6 games.
Yeah.
The contrast massive.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come on in a moment to the substitutions, I guess, or lack of, or the timing of them in a second. But I just want to touch on a few of the individual performances. You mentioned Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I actually thought it was possibly his best performance of the season all round. I thought his hold-up play, I thought his first touch was excellent at times, the way he was bringing other players into the game. He constantly looks a threat. And I thought, even, to praise him even more, I think he probably got less service and support from Decore than he has in other games. I think Decore at times struggled to get up there with him, but he'd done a really good job in then just bringing other players in. I thought it was an outstanding performance.
Look, I think the more consistent they are as a group, the more they play in a system that suits the personnel, the more they become aware of what the roles are. Player ratings don't always reflect, in my opinion, the performance of a team. Yeah. But for me, there's no secret. He's managing his minutes better. You can see that. He's not, I wouldn't say less reliant, but he's got better options on the bench. Yeah. You can see it. He's pushing them. His fitness levels are coming up. His hold-up plays improving. But I think that's just down to the fact that we know how to use him better. And the link up with Decore, he's almost like a false striker, and he's coming in as one of the 5 midfielders to go and support him, press him. Whereas previous games, Calvert-Lewin's just being isolated, going out on his own. Yeah.
In the past, you've had Calvert-Lewin winning the flick on, then having to chase after himself.
Yeah.
Decore does so much running, and I think his work rate off the ball, pressing the defenders, whereas Calvert-Lewin's had to do that, then wait for the ball to come in, and you can see almost why at times he ends up picking up injuries. Yeah. A couple of other players I want to pick on. And I think in general, when I was looking around, I think generally it was a really strong team performance, particularly out of possession. But a couple of players I think who deserve a mention. First of all, obviously got on the score sheet, but I thought he was outstanding defensively again. Vitaly Michalenko. Again, he's coming on game by game. I think a player who's benefiting from the trust of the manager.
I couldn't, couldn't agree more. Honestly, I think one of his, his biggest areas for improvements is, lots of commentators and even as fans have seen as his defensive side of his game. Yeah. But fair play to him, he's improved it massively. But again, he still gets in good areas to support. I'd like to see that from the right hand side as well. We should probably touch on in a bit. But yeah, I mean, look, he's getting in areas where he's getting chances as well. And we needed that little bit of luck on Saturday. You know, first left-sided shot and then bounces back to his right. But, you know, you can see it, the appreciation's there from the fans as well. I mean, he comes over to the paddock where we are at the start of the game and you know, even at the start of the game, end of the game, you know what I mean? He gets a good reply from the fans. And
he's such a likeable character anyways. I mean, you can't, every Evertonian and loves a not a hard luck story. It's more than that, obviously, what his country are going through at the moment. But, you know, we want to rally around players like that, don't we? We want to be there to support them. I think it's been more disappointing for Evertonians that he hasn't really kicked on and he hasn't really settled. But it's great to see, because he epitomises, to a certain extent, a lot of what Everton's about. You know, whether he plays well or not, he rolls up his sleeve every time. You know, he's giving everything when he's out there.
Absolutely, and again, it's no secret, is it? His performances have improved. You know, you can see that bit of consistency in the back four as well. You know, with the same back four, definitely, the same winger in front of him. You can see his performances have got better and better, and he's for me, he's developing. He's probably the one in the group besides Garner who's probably making the most progress. But I'm waiting probably another couple of games and we'll be, you know, wary about who else is watching him and stuff like that. But it's the same personnel, brings a bit of consistency, and I think he's early doors with the shape now. But whoever we recruit in January, you know, to fit in that particular system, you know, I think Everton will continue to push on, picking results up. But he is one of those shining examples for me who's benefited from a bit of consistency in a certain shape. Yeah,
you touched on it as well. Obviously, Dwight McNeil. I think McNeil again was good at the weekend. I think you associate a player like Mike McNeil, whereas if he doesn't have the ball, you know, he's not really going to be effective. But I thought, you know, defensively supported Michalenko a lot. Okay, arguably they've maybe been up against the weaker attacking threat on that side versus Matoma on the other side. But I thought when he had the ball, he was clever with it. I thought his link-up play with Calvert-Lewin, Takore was good at times compared to maybe the other side, which we'll come on to in a moment. But I think McNeil and that relationship, it's really important. I mean, down the years, and you touched on the David Moyes comparison before. David Moyes had it with, you know, listen, not getting carried away, they're certainly nowhere near a Pienaar and Baines right now, but those types of relationships are massively beneficial, and they do tend to harness more when you're playing that same 11 week in, week out.
Yeah. No, I honestly agree with you, and that's what I'm saying, similarities to Moyes. You know, he's forming a basis of a group who is now going to, you know, this is your shape, you've got to fit in, you know, this is how we're going to recruit. And, you know, if that's the way we want to push forward as a bit of a counter-attacking team, then, you know, once the fans kind of buy into it a bit more, I think it'll probably just reap the benefits, you know, all round, you know, from recruitments and the players who we've got currently at the moment. It seems to suit them as well. The shape that we've got. But no, I wouldn't disagree. I wouldn't get carried away with, you know, Baines and Pienaar and making comparisons to those. But you can see, you know, off the ball effort, you know, out of possession, you know, they work really hard. Yeah. You know, it's just that in possession bit. It's just that bit more. Well, okay,
that takes time. That chemistry is a bit more difficult to achieve. Every manager says that. I think every manager experience says it's easy to set a team up to be hard to beat. It's a lot more difficult to set them out to go and win. Yeah. And I think if you're going to be hypercritical, we haven't quite got that balanced game in, game out yet in terms of going, okay, now we can step it up, or now can we go into that next gear. But I think that, you know, with a team as young as we've got, and that's one point to make before I kind of go on to some of the, I guess, more critical points. It's a very young team. It's some individuals in that team. You pointed out James Garner. You know, they haven't played many Premier League games. You know, Anana really hasn't played many Premier League games. Obviously wasn't involved at the weekends. Jack Harrison's been involved in a relegation, you know, so he's kind of picking himself up. Didn't have the best game on Saturday. You know, Branthwaite, as you mentioned before, very young. Michalenko, come from a different league. So there's a lot of players in there that are still very, you know, very early in their professional careers.
And likewise, like you say, in there, you're making good reference to the last season or two with Everton. The ones who've been around it, you know, Branthwaite had the benefit of going somewhere else and getting game time, but obviously last year was just a horrible year to be around and watch. But they have, it's difficult. We just want to see better performances on the pitch, don't we? No matter what. But we don't really we don't really take into account is you know, the mental effect of, you know, a young player, you know, have they got the right experience around them? Are they all on the same page? All those factors make a massive difference. And, You know, hopefully, you know, again with this shape, the slight changes and the personnel, and he's been a bit more consistent with his 11. You can start to see those relationships developing, you know, amongst the players in certain like areas of the pitch. You know, obviously as someone who's played at left back, I always look at the left back, you know, both sides and the left hand side of players. And I can see it. You can see that little, you know, the off the ball working for each other. But like you say, it's the next step in it. It's when we've won in possession. It's like, you know, what do we look like then? You know, as a, you know, a counter pressing team. I thought we looked really good Saturday. I was really happy with it. I thought, you know, when we broke in numbers. Yeah. And those players in particular. I mean, again, the ratings, if you look at them, they're around 6s and 7s and stuff. And I think, well, you know, it's important to remember that that's timing, that's coaching, that's practice, that pressing. But when we did press, I thought we were going to score more than every time when we pressed, we broke away. But it was just that lack of little quality and decision, wasn't it, with the final pass or just that decision. But I guess you're going to talk about subs shortly in a minute, but that would have just added a bit more energy for me around like 70, 80 minutes.
I think so, and I think that's the first thing I want to say. There's been criticism that's come in again for Ashley Young. I don't think necessarily for the own goal, but I think maybe you know, and being identified somewhat as the weak link. I think what I would say, having again watched the game back, Matoma, you know, you don't need to be an expert or, you know, by any stretch, you know, that Matoma is the threat for Brighton, and he's one of the best wingers in the Premier League. There's not there's maybe one or two fullbacks that have not had a torrid time against him. So that's the first thing to say, that even if Young would have been tormented the whole game, which I think he was, by the way, I think the first 60 minutes, I think he played well. I think, you know, we've just spoke about the relationship that Mykolenko and McNeil have got on one side. Don't think they quite got that yet with Harrison. I thought Harrison in particular struggled on and off the ball the weekend. I think you look at the support, the angles he kind of gives when he's supporting Young, and how hard it is at times for Young to kind of work off him. And you know yourself, being a fullback, when you come in, whether you're first to the ball or second to the ball, you're kind of looking at where your teammate is and how you can, and that affects how you then address the person on the ball. I think at times Harrison didn't really get that right, and didn't give him the support that he needed.
Yeah. I think that probably comes down to the movements of Brighton as well, you know, because like you're saying, them decisions when to press and how to press, you know, out of them pockets, he did sit in a lot. But I think what one thing people forget with Ashley Young is obviously, the age is one thing, but he's come in and set a bit of a level, you know, in that area, and he's showed us up. You know, will he get through the full 90 in every game? And are we dependent on him more than what we really need to? Yeah. But who's behind him stepping up?
Yeah, true.
You know, and when we make them changes, you know, for me, you know, I don't think Patterson, you know, or Godfrey, I've jumped to the first sort of, you know, thought of like, well, that we need to get them two on now, or one of the two. And I think you noticed that in the derby, you know, when he went to the 5. I know it changed with like going down to 10, but for me, Godfrey would have been probably a better replacement. But if they're not showing that to him and he hasn't got that confidence in them, then, you know, you've got to put your faith in the manager at the minute and say, well, you know, he's keeping them on for a reason, you know.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think the other point I'd add before we come on to the substitutions, the timing of them, and maybe the impact that had on the game, I think the main reason he's picking Ashley Young is actually his distribution as opposed to his defending. Bear with me, what I mean by that is Ashley Young's got a decent right foot and he can play the ball 40, 50, 60 yards comfortably. He can hit the target, which we've got, you know, predominantly up there in Calvert-Lewin. You look at the other two, you know, Patterson, you've mentioned Godfrey, neither of them really, and I haven't seen it from Patterson really, have got that, you know, nice right foot, have they? Mykolenko, you know, he's certainly no Baines, but he's still got a decent left foot. He's still, you know, capable of picking out a pass. That's what Dyche likes in his fullback. You can see that. He wants them to be able to look for that second, third line, first of all, and then play from there. Patterson invariably, if he doesn't play inside or he doesn't play he hasn't really got that out ball. And I think that's one of the big factors for me is that Dyche wants them to have that out ball and to be able to play long early. Yeah. And probably one of the reasons why he doesn't trust them.
Yeah, I'll probably contradict myself here because last time I was on talking about quality in corners and set pieces, I think Young played a part in some of those, you know. He's got it, hasn't he? I think it's been the lack of consistency. Yeah.
And
if there was a chance where you could merge two together, Patterson and Young, Young doesn't get in them. Yeah, he doesn't get in them deeper areas to get crosses in. Young, but when he, you know, what he does do, like you're saying, he does keep possession well. He does get into areas where he probably does distribute better. where Patterson gets in some great areas, overlaps really well, but really struggles with the final ball.
I look at Patterson in two different ways. One, again, I haven't played right back, but two, also haven't played inside of a right back. And the amount of times, or the difference it makes to a centre mid when you get a pass from a right back that's a yard in front of you versus a yard behind you, or it's onto your back foot as opposed to your front foot, or it's bouncing into you. You look at Young's passing invariably, it's crisp into that midfielder. And you know, when you're a Dyche team that maybe is getting 42% possession, every pass matters, and the detail on those passes matters. I think Ashley Young's got that, whereas I think Patterson at times a bit untidy, it's a bit messy, and there is times where we lose possession unnecessarily with Patterson, and I just thought it was worth mentioning that, and I'm glad you put a different slant on it. But I think despite some of the Blues maybe frustrations with to a certain extent the manager and maybe Young's performances, I think he brings a lot to that team that maybe people don't always look at.
Yeah, I agree. I'm obviously sitting around the lads who I do of a home match. I didn't think Ashley Young was the problem. I thought it was the right winger, the cover. Because when he got in, it was around that 65-minute mark. He got left 1v1 a few times and got outrun. But he didn't get isolated like that in the first half. They were doubling up really well. For me, that's where the goal had come from, more than a mistake. And I think if he's got more protection, it's more changing the right winger for me.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to get onto, and I think that's the bit. I'm not saying that every Evertonian was critical of Ashley Young, by the way. I think it was more critical of the manager for not making that change earlier. You said you noticed, Godfrey warming up for quite some time. Got a little bit of sympathy for the manager because he made that change at Anfield, the double change at half time. Got Keane in there. Keane's then made the mistake, that led to the penalty, and he's probably thinking, is he a little bit, once bitten, twice shy, thinking, don't really want to put Keane on, because I heard a few people saying, why doesn't he put Keane on and just go with 5 at the back? But he would have been the last person I'd have wanted to see. But going back to the point you made before, and I've been there as a coach and a manager thinking, they're not creating any chances here. And even though I can see there's tiredness there, sometimes making a change can have the opposite effect. And it could have, we don't know. It could have ended up, they get that goal 5 minutes early and ends up going on and beating us because that right side suddenly in turmoil. Although there was tiredness there and fatigue, they didn't look completely disorganised. Just started to look a little bit jaded, didn't they? And I'm with you. I would have made a change on the right side, even if it meant Young going forward and Patterson or Godfrey coming in at right back. Keeping Young on the pitch, but I think Harrison was probably the bigger problem on that side than Young was.
No, but Dan Juma for me would have been the one on the right,
maybe.
Just to keep that attacking threat in. But look, when they scored as well, it was almost like we'd stepped up again. We got a couple of more corners. We were playing a little bit more solid. Where in recent games we probably would have collapsed. We go one behind, or in situations like that where we're under pressure in the game. But I personally, I wouldn't blame Young. I think Young's probably been so consistent over the last 3 or 4 games that he deserves that bit of credit from the fan base anyway. Yeah. But I think the similarities to Moyes, as I mentioned before, was, we used to call it like Didder and Dave, to make a sub. You know what I mean? But is it just because he's got that much faith in the lads?
I agree, and we've said, you said it before, I completely agree with you. We've got a very strong 11 at the moment. When I say very long, it's very strong. It's probably that 11, if somehow you could keep them fit and it was the 80s and you play the same 11 every week, you could probably see them finishing, 9th, 10th, 11th comfortably. But once you go beyond that 11 and, Guy comes in for Anana, significantly weakening the team, you've maybe got, one of those centre-backs gets injured, God, you're really weaker. Calvert-Lewin comes out for better, weaker. There's not many areas of the pitch where you can go take what like for like. Maybe Dan Juma and Harrison, given that Harrison hasn't really kicked on yet, you could probably say that there's not a great deal between those two. But I think outside that 11, as you're getting at, it's tough for the manager. He's looking behind him going, do I really want to be putting him on? Is it? And that's where I say I have got a little bit of sympathy for it. But look, let's move on slightly. We've got a question which is a bigger question from Lucy. Hiya, question for the show. Do you think if Sean Dyche keeps us up again this year, I'm assuming with that first point that she's saying, we maybe more comfortably, not as tight as it was last year, that he deserves a longer term contract, or is the job remit to stay up for 2 years and we move on, similar to when we appointed Big Sam?
I think it's a tough question to answer that one for me, because obviously I couldn't look beyond the next game, mate. I'll be honest with Everton at the moment, and You know, the only thing that does give me more optimism is the new seats in the stadium, and you see the stadium progressing and stuff like that. But I think it's well too early. You know, to be, you know, I was all for a bit of change around Brentford. Depending on the results at Brentford. But that's what a couple of results do to you. You know, in football, it does. You see something different in the group. You're starting to see something different. You might think, well, now I can actually see what he's trying to get at with the group, with the squad. And if he's given that little bit more investment in the right areas and with the right strategy, nowhere near what we've been in the past, you know, I think the next transfer window and a few decisions off the field will probably tell you where we're going to go in the near future. If we went down last year, would have swapped dice? No, absolutely not, because we had a ready-made manager who knew what it took to again stabilise and get us, you know, get us out of that division if we went down. But I do, and I'm starting to see similarities to Moyes, and other than more attractive style of football, you know, especially towards the end of Moyes, we were tough to beat. You know, we were, you know, pushing into Europe. We were, you know, moving on to bigger and better things, and I just think it's too early for that kind of view with Dyche. I think he's a fella who's probably managing with an arm behind his back, tied up, you know, in terms of like finance and resource. But I think depending on where we are in January and what he's got at his disposal to bring in, whether that's loans or, you know, this thing that's banded around for players under 15 or at £15 million. There won't be many of them rounds,
No.
But I think
need to be more than 15 million when someone's looking at them.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But I actually think he's going to dip into the Championship, in January to bolster and strengthen. But in terms of answering that question, I think if he keeps us up this year and he makes progress on like from a bottom end to a top end finish in terms of the table, you know, even if it's just above, you know, into the top end, the bottom end of the top table, should I say. He's done a fantastic job, because it was in a mess, and it still currently is in a mess at the moment. And you know, fair play to him. You know, if he keeps the results going and he brings the right players in,
galvanises the group continually.
Yeah, definitely.
I think one person I want to mention while we're on that one, slightly away from Sean Dyche and a bit more off the pitch, is Kevin Thelwell. I mean, he got a lot of stick in the window, timing of the signings and stuff like that. But you're starting to look at the group now and go, well, you know, Onana's come in for decent money, but obviously a lot of promise. Big clubs sniffing around, which, whether you like it or not, is always a good sign. James Garner looks like an excellent signing now. Nathan Patterson hasn't quite kicked on, but he's there or thereabouts. The loan signer, Jack Harrison, despite the fact, you know, he's not being amazing, he's still fit into that group really well. He's everything that Sean Dyche wants. He's probably everything the Evertonians want in terms of work rate, and he's got a bit of quality off the ball. You know, Michalenko is starting to show, you know, starting to come to the fore a little bit more. Jared Brandtwaite's decision not to sell him and take the money made from PSV, and the decision to get him out on loan for the whole season last season, looks like a very shrewd one. Beto's coming in, looks like a good foil for Calvert-Lewin. Again, maybe not got us the goals and stuff, but he's not had many minutes, in fairness to him. I think you're looking at the squad now, given the limited resources that he's had to work with, and you're going, you know what, fair play. He's got a young squad there that he's assembled, and a squad that personality-wise look like they're the type of personalities that the Everton fans could buy into.
Yeah, no, look, he for me, between him and Dyche, that they've made better signings. Maybe if you look at the players we've signed in the past, you know, for the value we've paid for them and where they've come from, you think they're not as good as them, but they are. And that's the honest truth. You know, the more of what we, you know, from a core, what we're looking for within our players, you know, hard working. And I hate the way people bound that around and go, well, you're just looking for hard working players, but you're like, well, everyone is.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's fitting them into a system and a style that suits the manager.
If that's the bedrock of what you're getting in a player, then, you know, you're off to a pretty good start, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and we're not in a position to waste that money on the likes of Dele Alli and others like that, and you know, gambling. We've got to make sure we get it right, you know, with everyone that comes in, and that's even the loan signings. You know, everyone who's coming in now, I can see a difference in, you know, the consistency in the 11 by saying, look, if you're not coming in to break in the 11, it's no good as looking at you. You know, and I can see that with the way he changes on the bench, the same subs in the same positions, and it's the same rotations, and you're thinking, will he trust him?
Yeah.
Whereas there's others who've sat out, maybe a little bit unfair for one or two of the younger players who've done really well, and the they're getting that experience around the group. But I've been impressed with him, certainly in the last 3 or 4 games, his consistency in his 11, the players are buying into it, and I think if that reflects a new contract further down the line, well, time will tell.
Okay, well, let's move on to the future games. So I'm going to start before we go on to the next week's game or the weekend's game, Crystal Palace away. Just a brief word on the League Cup. Obviously, we've got through again. Pretty impressive, fairly standard or fairly straightforward victory against Burnley. But the way the draws actually opened itself, listen, we've got still a difficult game against the Premier League opposition at home to Fulham. But when you looked around at that draw, aside from your Port Vales and Middlesbrough, that a home draw against Fulham isn't the worst draw in the world. Port Vale and Borough have then been drawn together in the quarterfinals, which means one of them will be in the semi. You can't help but look at it and think, it could be the best chance we've had since, it was 2016, the last time we got to the semis against Man City and they beat us over 2 legs. The last time we got to a final, dare I say, it was in the League Cup, was 1984, 40 years ago nearly. There can't have been better chances, given the nature of the draw, for us to be in a semi or a final. And again, we're, as Evertonians, our nature to not to temper that and to be, pessimistic about it. But you can't help but think,
but why
listen,
not?
Yeah,
why not? It's a cup competition. It might be not a cup that we've done, terrifically well in over the years, but all the same.
That said, we're looking at before, and I know it's the quarter-final of the League Cup isn't huge because you have to win 3 or 4 games or whatever. But it's the 3rd time in 5 years now we've been in the quarter-final. So I think the better teams have been taking it a lot more seriously in recent years because they look at it as a chance. With how competitive the Premier League is and the FA Cup is, they look at it as a chance to get silverware, which is sometimes a lot more difficult with the cities and the Arsenals and I'm not going to mention them. Looking at the top trophies, but again, Fulham at home, maybe a chance of a Middlesbrough or Port Vale.
It depends how the manager sees it, isn't it? Really, because I
think his selections have shown for me how he sees it. He's making 3 or 4 changes, no more. What was it? 3 changes against Burnley.
3.
It was Danjuma. Who else come in? Danjuma. He left. He brought Ashley Young back in. That was a change, but from his point of view, it was a strong. It was the strongest right back, wasn't it?
Yeah, and again, I think for me, it's I can see him going game by game, and I don't even think he's looking that far ahead. I know in the plan and the prep it is, but in terms of like the sort of the health of the squad as well, game by game. That'll dictate where I think we are.
Let me put this on you then. So the way that the fixtures have come about, it's the week before Christmas. Christmas, in anyone's book, particularly seasoned Premier League manager like Sean Dyche, is the most important period of the season in terms of you can pick up 6 points, 9 points, or you can pick up none and everyone leapfrogs you. Do you play your strongest team going into that Christmas period against Bournemouth, or do you make 4 changes as opposed to 2 or 3?
I'll be honest with you, I think it'll be game by game. And looking as far ahead as that, I think it depends how we get on at the likes of, Palace and United and how many points we've picked up. But look, it wins as it is now. Everton look like a more confident team now in the way they're playing, in terms of how they're setting up. And if we can continue like that and pick points up, whether it's draws or wins, just avoid losses, it might put us in a completely different mindset coming into that game and a lot more confidence around it. And look, we're hungry for success, like every club. But, for us, if there's an opportunity there to progress, I'd be wanting to see a strong side. I'd be wanting to see us go and beating Fulham, and wanting us to progress on into a semi-final, And again, capturing and building on that, that negative, but, sort of...
It vindicates the progress, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got to say that, You've got a few people. It's a mixed response, I guess, to the result of the weekend. I think anyone's disappointed with the result. I think there's the manner of the performance. But if you start getting to semi-finals, dare I say a final, those people start going, well, all right, 20%, 30% position, so what?
Yeah.
If you're winning games and you get into finals, which, it's something that very few Everton managers have done in the last, 20, 30 years, then...
Look, it builds a bit of momentum as well, doesn't it? And I'm sure the players will be whetting their appetite with that fixture as well, and saying, right, come on, this is something to go for, let's see if we can give it a good go and push on. And you probably won't get a better opportunity to do it.
You won't.
You know, and like you're saying there, the type of draw that, you know, for the next round, you know, it's, you know, the League Cup's traditionally always put, you know, teams who've probably, you know, either lower level in the Prem, or they generally get through to the semis and finals anyway. Why can't that be us?
It's rare. I was looking back. It's rare. I think it's only once in the last 8 or 9 years that a championship or a League One side has been in the semi-final. So, you know, that alone tells you that there's an opportunity there that maybe not been there in the last few years. And we'll definitely need a bit of luck with the draw. I mean, if we draw Liverpool in the semis, then we might as well just park.
Do you know what, guys, at home, I don't know. You know, away from home, you know, I'll be honest, I'm still, you know, confused with the refereeing decision in that game, to even the numbers out and stuff like that. But, you know, it always seems to fall that way with Liverpool, and I think it's that big team mentality. Like, the referees and officials still, for me, a little bit more lenient with them than what they are with others. But it's a cup competition, mate, and you know, we've done it at home against Liverpool before in the cup, so why not?
Stop it, mate. You're getting me excited now. Okay, well, we're going to look forward to the game at the weekends, Palace away.
Yep.
Now, the last three fixtures we've had, I refer to West Ham as a bit of a yardstick in the Premier League. West Ham generally don't quite beat the top teams, but beat all of the weaker teams. We went there and won. Brighton aren't far off that yardstick. I guess the fact that they've, you know, where they performed in the league last year suggests they're maybe a little bit higher. We drew against them. I almost see Palace a little bit like that yardstick. You know, the last few years, they've not really been involved in relegation scraps. They always tend to be 13th, 14th or whatever, certainly in the last few years. I think that they're probably a team, really, if I'm going to be honest, and I'm maybe going to be a bit more positive about it, a team I'd like to see us finish above this year, because I think we have got a better 11 than them. But again, nonetheless, always a tough side to play. What are your feelings going into this game?
Optimistic. I mean, I looked back on the last, I think it was last 12 games, other than the Lampard game, the cup game, and the I think we played them close together. It was like December and March under Lampard, and it was 3-1 and 4-0. Previous to that, I think it was like 12 games unbeaten, you know, against Palace. And I guess what you're saying is, you know, what's let us down previously in the last 2 seasons is just that little bit more consistency, where I think they've had a more settled squad and been a bit more consistent. But by no shakes other than the Zaha, have they set anything on fire for me in a game? Yeah. They're steady, they're solid, they're difficult to break down, but I think they struggle with what most teams struggle at that level, is coming out and breaking teams down. And
they're very similar to us. I think it's fair to say, in a sense, they probably enjoy playing away from home more than they play at home at the moment. Yeah. Not as much the pressure, I just think the style of play, particularly under Hodgson, is like absorb, soak it up, hit teams on the break. Don't really need to go at teams. But yeah, I guess the pressure of the home fans to come out and play. Yeah. And you could feel that. I watched them against Tottenham a few weeks ago. I think it was on a Monday night or something. And you could sense the frustration from the fans that they weren't really showing much ambition. Obviously, that was against Tottenham, so they half got away with it. You can't imagine the fans allowing them to get away with sitting back against Everton.
No, listen, I think that's, again, the comparison to us is when the Luton game, when we've had to come out and play, being exposed, you know, and I think Dyche has learnt a lot from that game. And I think as a journey, we're starting to understand that we can't break teams down like that. And I think, like you're saying, with Palace, I wouldn't say so much with West Ham, they've got more creativity, I think, in the group, but Palace will be dangerous on the counter, you know, but when they've got to come out and play and break us down, I think Everton are probably just as dangerous on the counter as well now. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I mean, again, I'd just go back to the points of pick points up. Yeah. You know, no matter what we do, we just go pick points up, keep that style of play, you know, same 11-ish, you know, maybe Onana for Ghana Gay.
It's only a knock, isn't it, Onana?
So believe. But again, you know, it's competition for places as well now, isn't it? You know, they're pushing each other. But I'm quite confident about Saturday in terms of, like, if they put a performance in like they did against Brighton and again West Ham, you know, we should get a result. You know, they're playing well. You know, they're in form other than the derby. You know, they've won 1, drew 1. You know, so I'm quite happy with that. I'd rather be looking at a win and a draw than 2 draws or a loss.
Yeah, 100%, yeah. So other than the Onana one, you wouldn't expect or you wouldn't suggest any changes?
I can't see it, no. I can see it. I mean, I've done the 11, the consistency. I don't see him changing young. I think the back 5, you know, including the keeper, is getting a bit of continuity now.
Just on that one as well, just something to look out for. Brandwaite is on 4 yellow cards, Tarkowski's now on 3 yellow cards.
Yeah.
I think it's not until like just after Christmas that they get reset. So
yeah.
that's a concern. And what I mean, you look at a Palace away and stuff, and I can almost see where Brandwaite's getting a yellow cards already. He just, he comes behind the players a lot, doesn't he, and takes them. I think that's, it is what it is. You don't want to send your centre back out going, don't get booked today. It is what it is. I always think, and again, it's a bit of a strange cynic in me, I always think you plan that yellow card of when he's going to be missing. Our next game is, we've got a 2-week break and then we play Man United.
Man U at home, yeah.
I don't want to be missing Brandwaite for that game.
No.
So
well, and again, it comes back to the changes and the timing of the changes in the games and stuff. And I would like to think he'd manage that well enough. If we were at a period in the game where maybe he might move him into a different position in the pitch, or take him off, because I can see that little bit of confidence in them. Now 100%. I mean the one point I probably missed with Pickford on Saturday is my frustration with him is erraticness to distribute fast, and I'm like, just hold on to the ball. But I think on Saturday probably one of his poorest performances in terms of his distribution. His kicks were quite inconsistent, but I mean, as a back five,
I don't know, for me, I noticed that. I don't know if there was some kind of game plan or something that Dyche told him to do with the ball, but it was
low, wasn't it?
Yeah,
everything was quite fired into, like, he kept doing this, so he was playing into chess, but he just weren't getting it in there. No. Like, it was bouncing a lot through the midfield, which was, quite dangerous, But no, I'm quite, I think he'll go with the same, 4-5-1 or 4-4-2 as you see at the Doucouré coming off, and I think he'd be the game changer, Saturday, Doucouré. Yeah. I think he'd be the one who will either create or get the goal. No,
well, away from home, I think he is. And I'm not saying he's not been good at home, because obviously there's been some decent performances. I do think at home he looks a little bit more lost than he does away from home. So I don't know what it is, but I agree with you. I think he's a really important player, more so away from home. I don't expect any changes either from a personnel point of view. I think he'll approach it the same way. I think the only change would be Onana coming back in, and I think Onana, particularly away from home, does give you that extra bit of legs, particularly when you're looking to break and it's 50-60 yard counter attacks. I think he's someone who's got obviously he's got youth on his side, but he's got those longer legs, and he does cover the pitch a lot easier than Garnagay does.
And it's just a bit of height as well, isn't it?
Yeah, true. Particularly against a Roy Hodgson Palace side that I'll always look to set pieces as a chance to get on the score sheet. Prediction?
Well, I'm open for a win. And that's form suggests. I mean, other than the Lampard games there in recent times, Everton have done particularly well. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 win. Oof.
I'm going to go 2-1. I do think they'll get on the score sheet. I think we'll go into a 2-0 lead, though, and maybe just have to hang on towards the end. I do think that it'll start to take its toll a little bit. I'm glad this. I don't often say this, but I'm looking forward to a 2-week break after this, because I think that squad needs it. And thankfully, again, and it's unusual to say, is that a lot of the players are not really involved in international duty, so a lot of them are going to have a decent rest, which will do them the world of good.
I couldn't agree more. But I think I was looking at the next set of 6 fixtures and thinking how big they are. Until the next transfer window, especially. Or we start getting our juices up about who might be coming in and where we need the gaps filling. But I think, again, just referring back to his last couple of games, last 3 or 4 games, where the gaps are. He knows where. Knows what we're looking a little bit more at an organised team and playing in a certain way. And I think his faith in that group suggests that's the level. Anything that we're bringing in now.
I think he'd be very keen to try and rotate a couple of those centre backs and try and get rid of 1 or 2 of them and bring in a stronger one.
I mean, I'll be honest, guys. I'd like to see Michael Keane move on for himself as well.
I agree. Yeah.
Because I think at his age,
he can do a job somewhere in without
absolutely
doubt.
Yeah, definitely. But he reminds me of Aldgate to some extent. He's never going to break in the 11. No. He's had that many chances under different managers, and I think for him it's the right move at the right time. Whatever the contract situation is, I'm not sure, but I think that'll free Godfrey up a little bit more.
You could see one of those Premier League teams, one of those bottom 3 taking him, couldn't you?
Luton. It seems like Luton, or Sheffield United. But I'm looking forward to the break, as probably you are, and I think this game's absolutely massive. To get points on the board.
Get points, and come through unscathed.
I'm not bothered about the performance. You know, I'll take that on the chin. You know, 90 minutes a tough watch, but as long as we get points on the board, and I think the pressure's on Palace. You know, at home, you know, they're expected to, you know, on the way the situation we've been in, to get the points. You know, at least a point out of us. And if we both walk away with a point, will I be happy? It depends on, you know, how the game goes. But I think at the minute, you know, I'm quietly confident with.
I think going back to that, if you come out of that spell of games, as in, you know, West Ham, Brighton, Palace, you'd have took 5 points before them got out.
Definitely.
But yeah, that's about all for the show. Thanks again, Colin, for coming in. Appreciate it. We will have the opposition preview later in the week. Millsy will be catching up with the Palace podcast. I haven't got the name of that podcast, but I think we had them on last year. It's always a good chance to kind of get a little bit of a better insight into where the opposition are. The last few weeks, it's been really relevant. Both of us called a draw on the last opposition podcast. The previous one, the league one, Bournemouth, when the home got again, it was pretty predictable that we were going to come out on top. So it's a really good insight. Check that out. A little bit different to this one. It's more about the opposition, where Millsy will just be asking questions about how their season's gone, etc. So please do check it out. Thanks again to Pod Cafe providing us with this magnificent studio and setup. And enjoy the rest of your week, Blues. Up the toffees.
Up the toffees.